Now I'm going to really put you on the spot with this one.
Uh-oh.
So, and I know you've talked about this like at the crisis center and you've talked about it in group before. So, what are we really looking for in somebody that we've just met? Do I want to be a friend of theirs? Do I really want to spend time with this person, or is this person going to suck the life out of me? Can you kind of boil it down to something simple, what we want to look for? And I'm really
Simple is hard to break that down into. If you want the super simple answer, listen to your gut. You meet someone for the first time, you're having a conversation with this person. Oh, that seems right. Oh, that seems right. That's odd. Oh, that seems right. That's odd. It's an internal dialogue when we hear those kind of things, or that feels kind of icky, or you know what I mean? Like our gut will tell us before our head will so many times, like that doesn't feel good, that doesn't feel right. We tend to, when we meet someone for the first time, want to ignore those things and try to see the good in that person, especially, if this is somebody that there's an instant physical attraction to, or they show an interest in me and I like the way that that feels or whatever else. We tend to kind of put those things behind us. Well, I don't really know them that well, so maybe there was a reason they said that way or whatever else. But I will tell you, every single person that I've ever talked to at the crisis center or otherwise who's been a victim of domestic violence, the day they realize they're a victim of domestic violence, if they look at that day and they go backwards, that's what I typically say. Now that you know, here's the signs, and this is what it looks like, and this is what it's called. You may never had that word domestic violence before. You may never had that word abuse before. Now that you know what it's called, can you look backward and see that this behavior was going on? 100% of the time, people say yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that then. I didn't know it was that then. I didn't know that it was that then. Or I minimized it. Or I rationalized it, or I justified it. When the bottom line is, because that's what our brain tries to do, try to make reason out of unreasonable behavior. But they can typically go back practically to day one.
Yeah.
And say, this has been going on all of the time. And so, a big piece of that's why I say there's not really like a thumbnail version. There's no cliff notes. And that kind of a thing. But I think, again, paying attention to our gut, and we do that. You meet somebody for the very first time. Let's say there's not a physical attraction, they're not a romantic interest, and they start talking to you, a person you meet at church, a stranger on the street, somebody you meet at the grocery store, and they start having a conversation with you, and all of a sudden you're like, that's odd. Like you think that on the inside, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. Oh, that person's kind of crazy. Nice to meet you when you go and do your thing. You're not in a relationship. You have no want to be in a relationship. You acknowledge to yourself that was weird, or that didn't feel good, or that didn't make sense, and you turn around and you walk away. If we could do that in the same scenarios when, ooh, this person gives me that warm fuzzy, that whole I'm physically attracted to them, or they said all the right they first met me, and so I want to try to get them to know them more. In that scenario, we tend to justify those things, or we ignore them. Well, I misunderstood or whatever else. And so practicing listening to our gut will save us from so many situations. If it doesn't feel right for even 1 second, we have to acknowledge that it didn't feel right for that second. And two things can happen then. If we're brave enough at some point to broach that and say that didn't feel right, that person may have a completely justifiable answer to that. We just needed more information. So when you give me the more information and then that makes sense, oh, okay, I misread that. Then we can move on, right? If we ask that person the same thing and they can't give us a reasonable explanation, we didn't misread them. That's really what they meant. So then we have to acknowledge that's not okay. And then we have to listen to our gut and remove ourselves from that situation. But that's really hard to do. Very easy to say, really hard to do.
It really is.
Especially if you factor into where am I today with myself?
Mhm.
Am I struggling with my sense of self-worth? Is my self-esteem not where it's supposed to be? Do I feel bad about me? Am I am I lonely? Do
Mhm.
I just want someone to talk to?
Mhm.
Well, this person's at least willing to talk to me. So do I allow other things to go on?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Again, please don't misconstrue me saying if someone finds themselves in a relationship with an abuser, it's the victim's fault. No, that's not what I'm saying.
No. Mm-mm.
What I'm saying is an abuser is so good at that manipulation, that covert manipulation,
Mhm.
sometimes the victim falls into that trap. Short answer, listen to your gut.
Yeah.
That's the 1 second answer.
And I know you've given that to us before, but it's
Mhm,
a good time to remember that. And it
mhm,
also ties it in as you were talking. It reminded me of our the abuse inventory
mhm,
that you have at the crisis center. That does
mhm.
not show up well at all on the camera, but
Yeah, there's a little bit of a glare on it.
yeah, but we do have this on our YouTube channel. And I was having a hard time making a post of it. So it's literally on a short video, and this is all that you see on that video. And if you're not sure what's going on, or maybe you've gotten out of a relationship and you're pretty sure it was abusive, go back and do that abuse inventory. And I know I can go back and think all the way back to the beginning of that relationship with my ex-husband. And it was, I mean, it was one thing after another. But until you know what you're looking for, or you know to really listen to your gut that things are off, it's so important.
Yeah. And it's okay to ask questions. If you meet somebody for the first time and they say something that doesn't resonate with you or doesn't set well, it's okay to ask questions. It really is. The worst they can do is say, I'm not going to answer that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well then you can be done. Like you don't have to continue to pursue that relationship. I think that sometimes people think that they have to stand there and deal with that or they have to tolerate that or whatever else and you just don't.
That
You
was
just
something, that was a boundary I never knew how to do.
yeah.
So I'm standing there and I'm having this conversation with this person that really creeps me out. How do I get away from that conversation?
Mhm.
What are
Turn around
some
and walk away. You
don't
turn
have to
around and
say,
walk away.
you don't have
Yeah,
to say anything.
you don't have to say anything. You know, we're so programmed somehow that we have to explain ourselves to people,
Yep.
and we just don't.
Uh-uh.
Um, your son calls and he says, "Hey mom, can you babysit the kids today?" You can say no. End of conversation.
Yep.
You don't have to say, "Well, I'm really tired today," or "I've got this meeting to go to," or "I've got these plans," or "I have to do this thing, otherwise I would." You don't have to say that. The answer can be, I'm sorry, I can't do that today."
Mhm.
We feel like we have to explain.
Yeah.
Can you come and do this thing? Do you want to go have dinner with me? No. It really can be that simple.
Yeah.
We really, and again, you don't have to be a jerk about it. I'd rather not do that.
Yeah.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Hmm.
Now, you might leave somebody standing with a gap with their mouth wide open, like, did they just say no, thank you away? But it's okay. We
Yeah.
really don't owe explanations to why we give yes answers and why we give no answers. We
Mm-mm.
really don't have to. Society has put that expectation on us, but we don't have to.
Yeah. And it was so freeing when I really began to get that I don't have to explain. That was from my family of origin
Yeah,
of, well, you explain for 600 paragraphs why you're not able to do this, that, or the other. You don't have to.
yeah.
you know,
There's
when
a meme that I see on Facebook sometimes, and it's a picture of like a dog wrapped up in a big fluffy bathrobe with like a towel on its head and slippers on, laying cuddled up in the covers. And the first meme says, before you see the picture of the dog, it says, "No, I'm sorry, I can't. I have plans." And then the second picture is the dog all wrapped up, all snuggled into the bed, and it says, "My plans." And that's what I'm saying is that's okay.
yes.
You
Yeah.
know, no, I can't do that. And maybe because what you've decided you want to do this evening when you get off of work is put your pajamas on and lay on the couch and watch TV.
Yep.
You have the right to do that. And you don't have to explain that to someone.
Mm-mm.
No, I'd rather not go out, or no, I can't do that thing, or whatever else. And we need to make that normal. We need to normalize that you don't have to justify.
No, you don't. I heard a pastor say one time, which ordinarily you think, okay, they're supposed to be available 24/7 to anybody and everybody who calls. And he said, I really literally have to write on my calendar family time. And they had a set thing that they did. I don't remember if it was playing games and then watching a movie. I don't remember what it was. But anyway, he said, I literally have to write that on my calendar. And so my secretary will say, so and so called and wanted to know if you'd be available this evening from, 7 to 9 or whatever. And he'd look on his calendar and he'd say, no, I have a meeting or I have
Mhm,
plans.
mhm,
Because he did, you
mhm,
know, or somebody would call, it was back in the day of home phones, okay? And so somebody would call the home phone and he would answer the phone and they'd say, well, I really need to talk. Can I come over? Well, no, I'm in a meeting right now. So and I'll be tied up until, bedtime basically.
mhm,
And so I'm not going to be able to, but I'll be in the office tomorrow. And it was just, he was giving us examples of boundaries, bottom
mhm.
line, something that I never had learned. And
Yeah,
it's so freeing to learn that now. Putting it into practice is something different. And that
sure.
takes a process to
Yeah.
learn how to do that and actually do those carry out those boundaries. But it's so freeing. You mean I could say that? You mean I can just turn around and walk away? You mean I can
Mhm.
just, and you fill in the blank. Yeah,
Right.
yes, you really can.
Yeah. The other thing that goes along with that with setting boundaries, especially personal space boundaries, is you don't have to answer a question just because it's asked of you, or you don't have to go into great detail about it. I think of family members I've known who've been going through health issues,
Yeah.
and every person they see, from the mailman to the neighbor next door to, wherever, oh, how so and so, and feeling the need to have to give it an update to every single person you talk to. That's
Mhm.
exhausting,
It is.
right? And
Yes.
so that's another boundary that we need to learn how to set too. You don't have to answer every question just because it's asked of you.
Yeah.
And somebody who's trying to escape an abusive relationship, people are well intentioned.
Hmm.
How are things today? How are you feeling today? Have you heard from so and so? All that does is re traumatize that person time and time again if they feel like they have to share the intimate details of their story to everyone who asks.
Right.
And again, setting that boundary of saying, everything's fine, thank you. You can say that.
Hmm.
And that's the answer to the question. You don't, and they may, someone may want to push further. I appreciate your concern. Thank you.
Hmm.
And it's okay just to say that. We put so much pressure on ourselves. And so we don't want to partner with those people that are asking all of these things of us because it's exhausting to us. And so sometimes our well-meaning family and friends can re-victimize us
Yeah.
because they won't give us a moment of peace.
Hmm.
How many times has he called today? How many text messages have you gotten today? I don't want to talk about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so, people also need to normalize that. Like, it's okay to not answer those questions. Again, you don't have to go against everything you believe in and say, shut up, I don't want to talk to you. Like, you don't have to do that.
No. Mm-mm.
Thank you for your concern. I appreciate it. That's an answer to a question sometimes.
I never learned that either. One thing I'm finding out through the counseling is that I was very enmeshed with my mom in our relationship. So I can remember I would just open up and start telling her stuff that she hadn't even asked me. And I'm thinking to myself, why am I doing this? But I was giving way more information than I needed to. There was no boundary there. And so she could literally ask anything she wanted to. I can remember when I got a job and she said, well, how much money are you making an hour? Oh, how much is your rent? Think questions like that. And I can remember her asking a family member, well, how much do you weigh now? Because they had started putting on weight.
Mhm.
What size pants are you wearing now? Things like that. That it's just that's none of your business.
Right?
Absolutely none of your business.
Yeah. You don't have to answer those questions.
No. And that was just such an aha moment. I swear the sun broke out from the clouds and I heard angels singing. You know,
Ah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so
And
much
so,
we could go into with this. There's so many side roads we could take
yeah.
and go down. Yeah. Go
You know,
ahead.
and that's the hard thing about setting boundaries is it's easy to say, but it really is challenging to do. And depending on the nature of the relationship that you have with people, some people we purposefully do give a little bit of power over us.
Hmm.
Like I've told you before, I care what my parents think of me. I give them the power to have an opinion that I care about.
Hmm.
And so, that would be a place that would be challenging for me to maybe set one of those boundaries.
Right.
But yet it's still important to do that and it's still acceptable to do that.
Hmm.
And so we have to pay very close attention to those people that we do give that authority to have a little bit of power over us, because if they're going to misuse it, and that's going to hurt us,
Yeah.
or if they're going to insist that they know this and know this and know this when it's something that I don't want to talk about, but I go ahead and do it anyway because I gave them a little bit of power over me, that hurts me.
Hmm.
And so we do have the right to not have those conversations. But it
Hmm.
can be hard to do. I mean, it can be hard to be like, you know what? I'm sorry. I don't want to have this conversation with you.
Right.
And if they can't handle it, then that becomes their problem, not
Mhm.
your problem.
But it feels like my problem.
Yes.
It feels like what I've done is I've taken scissors and cut our relationship off.
Yes. I understand that.
Hmm.
But again, it's not your problem to have. It's their problem.
Right.
We have absolutely no control over how people respond to the words that we say. Where
Exactly.
we where we have control is over how we say those words.
Hmm.
But even if we dissect every single word so carefully and we say it exactly right, the other person may still receive it wrong.
Hmm.
We have no control over how other people respond to the things that we say.
Exactly.
And so we do have to learn to remove ourselves from that.
Hmm.
Easy to say and hard to do.
Very, very much so. Very much so. Yeah.
But the more you put it into practice, the easier it becomes.
Hmm.
So, I mean, you start those kind of things with a super close, trusted person. And if that goes well with that super close person, you might be add another person, and then you add another person,
Hmm.
or however that is.
Right. And gradually over time, as you continue to allow yourself to be worked on and you try to improve yourself and you go to counseling, you whatever, you're reading books like this, and eventually you begin to see a path that you really are walking towards emotional health,
Hmm.
mental health.
Yeah, and I mean, there's different ways to frame things because I think about that. This may surprise you, but a lot of the ways that I respond to those kind of things is sarcastically. I'm sure you're shocked.
I never would have guessed that.
But I even thinking about people have asked me before, well, how much money do you make? And my typical answer is about 50 cents an hour. And then I just go on because it's really
Yep,
nobody's business. And
it
so
isn't.
it's just as ludicrous for me to say 50 cents an hour as it is for me to say 100 an hour because really it's none of your business. It's somewhere in between.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And so that's find what works best with your personality and your character and then be consistent of character. I'm consistently sarcastic so I can get away with it. That's kind of the way that I live my life, and so people will receive that from me because I'm consistently that way.
And people actually have the gall to ask you how much you make.
One of our residents, well, she was a teenager, she asked one time, well, what do your employees make? I said I typically pay them in chocolate chip cookies. And so, on a good week, we might have a dozen. It just kind of depends. And she laughed and went on. And I answered her question.
Yeah.
And so she kind of laughed. And then she said something later on to one of the employees about their chocolate chip cookies. And they were like, what are you even talking about? So then it kind of became a joke for a while that people that worked at the crisis center got paid in chocolate chip cookies.
Hey, it works.
Right. I mean, that's one way to handle it. The other way to handle it is I'm not going to share that information with you. You choose the way that you deal with it. But
Right. I
yeah.
love the way you always handled things with humor. And it just absolutely changed the entire atmosphere of walking in the office at the crisis center. Always. It was just like, how does she come up with this stuff?
It just kind of comes out of my mouth.
It does. Yes. Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's a what tactic, for lack of a better term, that I picked up along. I learned it from my dad. Like I
Mhm.
watched him do it my whole life, and so I kind of modeled myself after that. And so, if
Yeah.
you don't know how to set a boundary, find somebody in your life that you trust that seemingly sets boundaries well, and watch how they do it.
Excellent.
And then for you, you can put it into practice. If that doesn't work with you for you, then find another person and watch how they model that behavior. People are modeling behavior for us all day, every day.
Hmm.
Some people we look at the behavior they model and we're like, that's amazing. I want to be like that. Some people model behavior for us and we say, that's horrible. I never want to be like that. But
Right.
two behaviors have been modeled. Then
Mhm.
we have the choice to look at those and say, well, which one do I want to model myself after?
Mhm.
And that's what we do.
Yeah. That's an excellent way to learn. And I love one I loved one of the nuggets that Leah said. She said, if you don't have family, create a family, make a
Yes.
family. And
Hmm.
that's exactly what I've done. And I know some people are going to say that the next thing I'm going to tell you is not healthy and I should never have done this. But it became a point where it became healthy for me to cut off certain family members. I didn't say all, I said certain family members because it was not a healthy thing for me to be involved in their lives. It
Right.
just wasn't. And so then, of course, that creates a hole in your life. But then if you're looking for those friends that you want to be like, or you like that certain thing that they do and how they do it, like boundaries or
Mhm.
whatever that would be, um, see how much they'll let you hang out with them and observe and learn from them. And it's amazing how
Yeah,
well that works.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And just because they're your family, there are people who are unhealthy to be around. Just because they're your family does not make them unhealthy.
Right.
And there's wisdom in knowing when enough is enough. And
Yes.
in the same respect, you can have friends where you're like, this is not a healthy relationship for me anymore. So I'm going to
Mhm.
back out of this relationship. You can have the right to do that with family as well.
Mhm.
Sometimes you have to do it more with family than you do with your friends.
That's what I have found, and that's
Yeah.
really surprised me. I think if you had asked me that, 5 years after I'd stayed at the crisis center, and we'd had a conversation like this, and you had, asked me something like that, I'd say, no, I don't think so. But wow, do I see that now?
Yeah.
Definitely.
So before we end tonight, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you know what the universal hand signal for help is?
I do actually. I
You
do.
do?
Yes, I do.
Would you share that with us tonight?
Well, sure, I can. Absolutely. And it's very simple. Anybody can do this. As long as they have a hand, they can do this. So you're
Wait a
going to
minute.
well, you have to have a hand. It's a hand signal.
I thought you were picking on me for a second.
No. So what you're going to do is tuck your thumb in, and then you're going to put your fingers over it. And then if you see somebody doing this over and over again, that's what they're trying to get. They're trying to get your attention. Help me is how my grandson says it. So be looking for that. Not that we want to see people in trouble, but we want to be able to be there to help them out if they have an issue.
Yeah.
And yeah, teach those grandchildren this is not a game. This is the real deal. You are in a really bad situation and you need help.
Absolutely.
Mhm. So I think that's it for tonight, isn't it?
That's all I got.
That's all I've got too. Folks, thank you for watching us. We appreciate it. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. And we appreciate it so much. Remember that no matter where you are in this process, you're always free to soar.
Yeah.
Well, we have actually done an entire episode here. And so it's time to call it quits for tonight.
Okay.
Did that go by quickly for you?
Always does. We just started talking 2 minutes ago.
I know, right? And I only asked you one question.
One question.
That's all she wrote. Thank you for your time. And thank you so much for your expertise. I think I do want to bring out one thing, and I think I've talked about it before, but when I used to come to group at the crisis center and sit there, and you were always, it always seemed like it was packed that night. And so you'd be way back in the hallway sitting in a chair, and I couldn't even see you, didn't even know you were there. And you would just let the group go on and you didn't talk or anything. And then all of a sudden, there'd be this voice that would come from the hallway. And you just, your wisdom, the wisdom you have is just amazing. For somebody who has not come from any kind of a background of abuse, you really grasped onto and obtained an understanding of what we as victims have gone through. And it just blows my mind every
Thank you for
time,
that.
knowing what kind of a family you have. And that's, it's nowhere in your background, but you nail it every time. And you would
I
do that
appreciate that.
every time at the crisis center. And your behavior was always genuinely humble, and you were not trying to put yourself out there in front and be front and center. You were not trying to, blow your own horn and say, I am the executive director here. I mean, there was, it's comical to even think about that, because that's not who you are at all. And it just, I think it really endears people to you, whether they are your employees or they are residents there. They can see the genuineness of who you are and how much you care. And so I just want to tell you thank you for that, because that means a lot. It did a lot for me sitting at support group at the crisis center and hearing you say the things that you would, whether it was insight or answering somebody's question or whatever. not only did it blow my mind, but it was also just so healing to hear. And it was a big chunk of my healing journey. So thank you. I think, I really think you and your advocates don't really know how much of an impact you make on people's lives, but you really do. And being able to do that here on YouTube is, and wherever else we choose to post this in the future, I
Yeah.
think is huge for people to
Thank you.
really learn from. So thank you for sharing that wisdom and being able to come out in front of the camera and do this, because it's not something that you and I are naturally wanting to sign up for. And folks, you can find out about that in previous episodes, but but this does not come naturally to Becky or I. So just want to
I
make sure.
appreciate you saying that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you pass that along to your advocates as well,
I will.
because they are deeply appreciated. Well, folks, remember that no matter where you are in this process, you are always free to soar.